Good evening. Thank you for joining our show tonight, Aging Matters. I'm Kathy Monroe. I'm Executive Director of Berks County Area Agency on Aging. Tonight our show is going to be about financial exploitation among our elderly victims. I have with me tonight Dianne Glass, who's a care manager with our Protective Services Unit at the Area Agency on Aging, and I have Dr. Santo Marabella, who's the executive producer of Senior Exploits. And we'll be talking tonight about financial exploitation, and we'll also be talking about a project that we have with Dr. Marabella this evening. Dianne, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? I know that a little later, as we get ready to close the show, we'll talk about your new book that's coming out. I think it's called A Perfect Person in an Imperfect World.
It sure is.
Okay. But first we'll talk about what it is that you do at the Area Agency on Aging.
Well, in between being perfect, it's very difficult, but I'm actually a protective services care manager, meaning we investigate issues pertaining to financial exploitation, abuse, neglect. And basically, unfortunately, the workload and numbers have increased dramatically on all levels, but with financial exploitation, we are seeing those numbers drastically increase. Last year alone, we had about 140 financial exploitation concerns reported to our office. This year, we're probably going to exceed that. We also have different types of exploitation as well that we deal with, but we'll get more specific into those.
Okay.
And I would like to say in the beginning here, because of what we do, we did have an arrest last night on a recent case with a client that we served, a family member who took over $100,000 from this person. So we're seeing results come from these cases that are referred to us.
And sometimes it seems like we're never going to see the results of this type of exploitation of our elderly victims being taken advantage of, because sometimes the process is very slow. So this was really a big kudo for us for this to take place. It was almost a 2-year time period.
Yeah, correct.
But you know, eventually the perpetrator or whatever, the person who victimized our elderly consumer, was justice was done, and you know, we can only appreciate that. Dr. Marabella, Santo, talk to us a little bit about the project that you have going on with our agency.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure. Over here? Okay. I approached the Office of the Aging because, well, first of all, your office as a resource has been really important to this community for years, and ever since I was a little kid. And my dad and I used to entertain evenings, Christmas Day, but I knew when there were issues throughout years that if there were issues or questions I could always go to the office. So this was no different. When I started getting concerned about, I'm very blessed to have both my parents fairly active, fairly reasonable health, and a lot of their friends, and they're very, fortunately very alert. But I worry about them. I worry about their friends. I worry about other active seniors, and the likelihood or the possibility of them being scammed because of how shrewd people are. Right. And so I approached Kathy and her staff with an idea that, lecturing has never worked with kids, and it doesn't work really well with our parents either. So
absolutely right. No.
So I knew we wouldn't get far with that one. And so I figured, what other way could we do that? Well, I'm a storyteller, sometimes on the stage, sometimes in film, so let's tell that story in a fun way, entertaining way, but a serious message. And so we did we worked through a lot of research that your colleagues and you provided us, and I developed a story and script, and we just filmed that. We filmed it as a play, so I'm calling it a film play, just recently, and now we're ready to present it to the community, because I'm happy to have the Office of Aging working with me here in Berks County. They're going to be sharing that video starting next week.
And that is correct. We're actually going to have a debut of it next week. I think that's going to be September 9th at the Boyertown Multi-Service Center at Spring Street. So if anyone is able to make it there, and if they're interested in being there for the debut, then that's where it's going to be. That'll be at 10:45 a.m. on September 9th at the Boyertown Multi-Center.
All right.
Okay.
And I think what we tried to do, you know, Dianne talked about the financial exploitation, how serious that can be, and we'll learn more about that. We tried to represent kind of a composite of scams. You know, we didn't certainly talk about every scam in this 20-minute film, but we tried to represent the different types and how they might be perpetrated. And I'm not going to give away any of our secrets, but we really, I think we did our research, and I think we'll find that we're telling the story in a way that will be accessible. We're also going to have a Spanish language version that will be subtitled for our members of our community throughout, not only here, but throughout the country, that when I distribute this, so that'll be neat.
Okay. And I know you don't want to give anything away, so what I'm going to do, Dianne and I are going to dialogue a little bit. And there's some information that she has on exploitation. Sure. This is something that she does every day. And like she said, we have about 50% of the cases that we deal with in protective services now are financial exploitation. And there's different types of financial exploitation, Dianne, and I want you to talk a little bit about some of the different types.
Sure, and unfortunately we see it come in all different forms. Whether it's through the mail, through the phone, through somebody going door to door, through somebody retaining a power of attorney on someone, taking advantage of that and basically taking somebody's accounts and depleting them. We've seen a lot more scams, people falling for scams and losing a larger amount of money in those, so I wanted to cover a couple examples of what types of scams we see.
Right.
And, you know, and unfortunately, the scammers themselves do not see the emotional toll that it takes on the victims. And once they realize, most of them, you can get them to realize the money's not coming back, you know, and you've been a victim.
There's some type of bond that is formed.
Yes.
It seems like, especially if you have someone who doesn't socialize much, doesn't get out of the home, and that type of thing. They kind of like bond with the person that they're talking to or communicating with.
Definitely. I've had multiple clients who I visit with them in their home, and they get rather personal. They open up, but unfortunately they open up to the scammers as well.
Right.
And as their roles diminish, they lose people in their lives, their spouse, anyone else. These scammers, they say, a lot of people have said to me, but they seem like they were my friend. They were very interested, and they would call me. They'd call me and check in on me 4 times a day. Well, you know, you're Western Unioning money to them often, or you're giving them what they want. You know, these people are very seasoned, unfortunately, a lot of these scammers, and they seem to often be able to pick up the right person, and before you know it, the money trail of the paper trail and the Western Union transfers, whatnot, are compiled. It's
Well, you know, I did a training out at the senior college at Alvernia University, and we talked about some of the scams. One of the scams was the one about the lottery.
Yes.
Want to talk a little bit about the lottery scam?
We get a lot of people that try to mirror Publishers Clearinghouse, send mail. I actually have a couple graphics of a letter and a bogus check that a client of mine did have. And in fact, unfortunately, this gentleman lost over $200,000 before our office was contacted. Wow. As you can see from the graphic, that's a letter that he received that we intercepted right towards the end of our intervention, right towards the beginning, rather, of our intervention. There's another graphic showing...
And it says Federal Lottery Commission.
Oh, yeah. These guys, they're even actually, they just get they look very professional, they look real. And usually they say you only have this much time to respond, so people think, well, I don't want to think about it, let me just call and try to get this money. That check there is no good. It's something that, but it looks real. It looks as if it's something that might go through, and we see these things happen all the time. Not just those. We also have other mailings, other graphics that I brought. Some claiming to be a charity or an organization that's going to help someone who either sick children, veterans. They try to tug at your heartstrings. They often offer a prize, as this also was a client who lost a substantial amount of money as well. Responded to several of these, and she would donate the maximum amount. Maybe it was $25 on there and a chance of winning this $10,000. And before you knew it, she'd be going to dozens, literally dozens of these and reaching out to them to try to win these prizes.
Okay. Dianne, we have a home viewer. Good evening, home viewer.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
Yes, I just have a question and really a comment.
Okay.
My question is, how do people get people who are on Medicare and Social Security their addresses? Things come through the mail that don't say they're from the government, but it's assumed. And then they tell you that they'll help you with all this stuff. And I want to know how they get our addresses. And another question is, I had a scam played on me about 9 o'clock at night on my cell phone. They said to me who my bank was, and they said, we have an emergency. Do not use your debit card. There's been a whole place on it, but don't use it right now again, and we will help you. You give us your information, and we will renew your card for you. And I told them to be quiet, and I said, I'll talk to them. I called my bank, and they said nobody had ever called. But I bet people panic right away and say, my goodness, I got to use it to pay a bill tomorrow. So they go and give all their information. And I want to know how these people get these things.
It's an elaborate scheme. I mean, there are so many ways. Unfortunately, with the way technology is progressing, there are so many ways for them to get things online. You can go online and get information regarding you and say, oh, these are her relatives. I'm going to call her and say so-and-so's in trouble.
Right.
Right. Well, I knew about that scheme. I know about that very much. But I wanted to know how many people say, oh, my God, you can't keep this. Well, we're your bank. And they even sometimes know the name of the bank. And I don't do things online, so I don't know how they got this information. But that was really scary. And if I had panicked, and they said, give me all your information, and I'll put the debit card right back on.
Right. If you're not the one generating the call to the bank itself, you know, they're never going to, the bank's not going to call you and ask for all that specific information. They will ask for a call back. If it's a legitimate bank, we'll ask for a call back because we feel, maybe there's some charges that are not your pattern, charges or withdrawals from an account that aren't your pattern. But yes, I don't believe the federal authorities or local authorities can. They're still trying to put up the pieces of the puzzle for that because they're so elaborate. Some of them are international. A lot of them are international scammers. We refer things to the Attorney General's office. They look into things but can't always troubleshoot where these scammers are getting all the information.
Sometimes, like you said, some of it can come, from being online. There's organizations that actually sell information, to other people. So there's various different avenues that your information, can be shared. But my thing is when someone is asking you for something over the phone, one of the things that you should do is say, send it to me in the mail, that request. And a lot of times you won't get that. Or, either contact the Attorney General's office. I know you said that was late in the evening or whatever. But the next day tell them that, you might want to say, oh, well, you can send it to me in the mail. I want to talk to the Attorney General's office. Tell them what you're going to do. And, maybe that'll be a way to ward them off, to keep them from calling you and bothering you.
Well, I got right to my bank because they have the kind that if you want to talk to somebody live all night, you can. And I told them, I said, how did they know I was with your bank, and how did they know I even had a debit card?
And unfortunately, too, there are people that work in a lot of different stores, financial institutions, who are not very good. They actually will sell your information to some people as well. Unfortunately, that happens a small percentage of the time as well. A store employee might say, so-and-so goes here and comes here every week, and these are her patterns, and unfortunately those things have happened in the past as well.
Right. Well, I just wanted to have people, because they do it at the strangest times where some people probably can't get to their bank, and they think, I'm going to the doctor's tomorrow, I need my debit card, and then they go and give all their information over the phone to somebody.
That's correct. And once you're a victim one time, I guarantee you're going to start getting a lot of solicitation A lot of people's mail dramatically increases once they are a victim. That's a sign to look for as a relative of someone. You know, all of a sudden they're getting tons of mail, and it's all solicitation, you know, for charities or they've won a lottery. I had a client who was getting about 40 other pieces of mail a day that were just scam related. So.
And I want to know, does Medicare and Medicaid give out information to people? How do they get us? How do they know when that I'm the person they're talking to? They just say, we'll help you with all this Medicare stuff. And you can get that done free just by calling Medicare, but they say, give us all your information and we will handle all these forms for you. And I bet people they get frightened and they give all their information and send it in to people.
I would probably be willing to say that Medicare and Medicaid do not share that information. That sometimes the scammer may be just going on, basically, they may somehow know the age of an individual and make assumptions that they are, you know, utilizing Medicare, Medicaid. But organizations like that, you know, do not share information.
They come in that green paper that looks like the government. They don't say that they'll have like little tiny words down below, but when you first get it, that's what you think. Oh my goodness, if I don't send this in, I'm not going to get this and I'm not going to get that. And it does frighten you the first couple of times.
Well, you know what? It never hurts for you to call that organization.
Maybe we should put the graphic up showing some of the organizations you can contact to try to verify legitimate charities, legitimate.
Okay.
I think we have a graphic that we could probably put up.
There you go. Here we go.
But just call your bank first before you do anything.
Right.
Yes.
Don't
Pennsylvania
believe
Department,
anybody.
Yes. We have a graphic up. The Pennsylvania Department of Banking monitors banks and exploitation type situations. They don't monitor federal credit unions, but they do monitor banks. And Attorney General's office is always a good place to turn to and ask some questions.
Yeah. And they really help you because I've gone through them twice with them.
Right.
And
Yes,
help
they
you.
do.
They really do.
And then
They
there's
do.
also a couple other graphics there for Federal Trade Commission, charitable organizations to determine whether or not they're a legitimate charitable organization, reputable. So we have those graphics up for that.
Okay. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
One of the things that we always try to tell individuals, especially when it comes to the lottery scam, is that, you know, if you didn't play a lottery, you didn't win the lottery. You know, so that's another major thing.
And you
to
don't
remember.
have to pay, you know, anything ahead of time. If you win a lottery, they'll take out the taxes, which is like what, half of it. They'll take that out, you know, prior to you getting your winnings. So you don't have to ever pay to be the winner there.
Santo, let's talk a little bit more about some of the senior exploits that, without revealing too much, that you know about.
What struck me while we were talking is that one of the things that I learned from the research that you folks shared was that this notion of trust. As folks age in the natural course of aging, there are studies that kind of indicate that we become more trusting.
We do.
And in some ways, it surprises me, because we've been through so much in our lives and you would think we've become a little bit more cynical. But in other ways, I really get it, because Dianne talked about it too. People are alone, they're by themselves. They want to trust. They want to connect with somebody.
Right. That's true.
It's scary because, you know, people aren't, we have one line in this the film play that, you know, it's like, oh, I feel like such a dummy, and people aren't. It's not because they're mentally, their capacities are dwindling or deteriorating at all. These are smart people, alert people who are being duped. I just had a situation where somebody lifted my credit card number, and while I was working on this one Friday.
Wow.
And they didn't have my card, but, you know, talk about how they got it. They probably downloaded it, bought it on the black market.
Yeah.
They used it in PA, they used it in New Jersey, and I spent 4 hours on the phone with police departments in 3 different precincts, because people are really shrewd, and, you know, and they printed a plastic card.
Right.
So it's not that people are doing anything wrong or they're not being smart about it. A lot of times it's just that we have to be really vigilant.
Right.
Extremely vigilant.
And we rely on the public to try to help, you know, increase the amount of referrals that we get, because oftentimes I'll have a bank teller say, I knew something was wrong for a long time, and think, well, why didn't you
You
know?
say
Please,
something.
please err on the side of caution and call us. You know, it's best to look at something and you know, shrug it off if it's something that's minor or it's not.
Dan, what about privacy then? What can somebody that witnesses that do legally? I mean, is that considered invasion of privacy?
As far as what are you
So
speaking of?
if the bank noticed something, would they have to first talk to the client before they call an outside agency?
It all depends.
Yeah,
Does it
that depends. And what we're
banks
trying to do, our office and other entities are trying to conduct trainings with financial institutions to kind of like guide them on what they should or they shouldn't do. And, you know, if someone ever reports anything to our office, you know, it's always confidential. You know, no one,
Right.
you know, no information is shared, or no one knows that that information has been reported.
Some banks have really stepped up the measures for elder abuse. Some of them have actually elder financial exploitation units themselves to troubleshoot. They have more ways to red flag when there's a difference in patterns or a lot of overdraft charges on certain accounts. So they've gotten a lot better at flagging things and notifying whoever they feel is appropriate, whether it's our agency in conjunction with law enforcement or law enforcement or having somebody they actually sometimes will pull a client aside at the bank and say, hey, Ms. Smith, is everything okay? You know?
Well, I was telling Diane right before we went on the air about something that I saw about, it was another elderly person who actually victimized another, you know, their peer, and they became the caregiver of someone, and there hadn't been much activity on this person's account, but once they became the caregiver, then there was activity, a lot of activity on their bank, you know, with their bank accounts, and that was, you know, raising the flag. But it was quite a bit of money that was unfortunately scammed or taken before, you know, anything was done about it. So that's sad too. Yeah.
Definitely takes its toll on not just that individual. So family members beat themselves up too. Mom's always been private. I don't want to get involved. But sometimes, unfortunately, maybe it is best to get in there a little bit and see what's going on, especially if there's pattern changes in phone calls, scammers calling several times a day, or, like I said, the mailings, things like that.
Let's talk about phone call. And, you know, one of the phone calls, and I know the home viewer touched on it a little bit. Oh, yes, I've heard about these calls. But the call about the relative in the middle of the night calling, and their car is broken down, or they've been arrested or something like that, and they're calling their grandmother, and then the first thing that the person may say is call out one of the names of their grandchildren, and then from that point on, then there's an association made. Then that person then becomes Johnny or becomes, you know, Sarah or something like that. But again, we've had situations like that to come through. But you just need to know, maybe the thing that you would do there is to tell that person, well, let me call you right back. Where are you calling from? Where are you calling back? Or either, you know, call their parent, because if that's a grandchild, then that means that's the child of one of your children. So you need to find out, you know, what's going on. Where are they at this point in time?
I just want to say real quickly that I'm really grateful to your office for being proactive about it on your own in such a way, and very aggressive and assertive, but also for joining in the project that I wanted to see to fruition, because what it does is it gets it discussable.
Right.
Just
Right,
talking
exactly.
about it will help people,
Right.
if nothing else. Yeah?
And they'll say, when they see what you're getting ready to roll out here, Santo, they'll be able to identify with, and they won't think that they're alone in this.
Right.
And like you said, we talked about people thinking that it's something that they've done wrong. Right. You know, it's something about them, and it's not. You know, when there's bad people, it's you know, there's just some bad people in this world.
I also want to touch upon, you know, they call it the sweetheart scamming, where somebody, you know, feels as if they state they have feelings for a person, or they're going to they're going to be the only person who can take care of this person, you know, and as long as they're getting money out of the ATM or getting them to write them checks or give them their charge card, they're going to pretend to have feelings for this individual, and we're seeing more and more of this as well.
Wow.
With whether it's a neighbor taking advantage of someone, or somebody who literally met an older person at the grocery store and somehow became connected with them.
Okay.
So there's so many levels to this scamming, unfortunately. And it's a multi-billion-dollar, I hate to say industry, but it's a problem. It's a multi-billion-dollar problem. So
And that's really sad.
it is.
That's really sad. Again, I don't know if we could put the visual up again, or the individuals could call in case that they feel that they have been victimized or they want to know further about some of these scams.
And of course, our office.
Yes, we have the Pennsylvania Department of Banking, the Pennsylvania Office of the Attorney General, and the Pennsylvania State
Charitable,
charitable
Bureau of Organizations.
charitable organizations, and the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. And please do not forget, of course, our office, Berks County Area Agency on Aging, and our number is 610-478-6500.
They're not guaranteed to get me, though. I know I will be requested.
Everybody will be calling asking for Dianne. We have an entire protective services unit, but just call our office and state what your problem is. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Good night.